60 Minutes with Angela starts right now.
It seems to me that it may be tempting to think that this day truly belongs to me. Regrettably, it does not. It belongs to Akim Bello, who painstakingly documented all of this work for us. It belongs also to Dakwadini, who worked with him to deliver this. To all of you who have come to join us at this event, what you have done is to join us in celebrating and honoring Mr. Akim Bello, a gentleman, a family man, and a consummate professional whose passion for his work epitomizes his fidelity to any cause that he believes in.
Well, hello and welcome. This is 60 Minutes with me, Angela Jitumobi. Thank you for joining me on the program today. Well, it was Tuesday, the 18th day of August 2015, a public presentation of 3 books written by the former special advisor to the former governor of Lagos State on media and publicity, Akim Bello. The 3 books titled The Great Leap, a collection of speeches by the former governor Babatunde Fashola. The second book, in bold print, Thoughts of Babatunde Fashola. And the third, The Lagos Blowdown, West Africa's first controlled demolition. All 3 books compiled and edited by his former special advisor on media and publicity, Akim Bello, with the help of Dakwadini. I join all associations in celebrating a great period in this organization, the period marked by the governorship. Our son, whom we are well pleased, Governor Raji Fashola, he produce or provide material for future growth and prosperity of Lagos. And the Lagos But first, it's almost 100 days since President Muhammadu Buhari became president here in Nigeria. He was sworn in on the May 29, 2015. So far, there haven't been many appointments. Ministers of all the ministries, and the Constitution requires President Buhari to appoint ministers that cut across and reflects the federal character of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Well, so far there have been some major policy thrusts from the office of the president. First, he will be probing arms purchases and contracts of procurement of weapons for the military under former President Goodluck Jonathan. He will also be probing Nigeria's National Petroleum Corporation, the excess crude account management under the former president. We've also seen the arrest, detention and investigation of former aides of the former president Goodluck Jonathan, the National Security Advisor Sambo Dasuki, the Chief Security Officer of the former president Godwin Obua, and the Director General of Nigerian Maritime Agency, Patrick Apobolokemi. Even though appointments are not forthcoming yet, We've also seen a directive from the President directing the opening of a Treasury single account, a TSA, for all ministries, departments and agencies. Most Nigerians think now that the war against corruption is on course. The President's body language, they think, tells the story. Of course, there are those who think that the appointments made so far seem to be lopsided in favor of one region in the country, and all the others who think that the war against corruption seems to be selective. Well, joining me on the phone now to take a look at all these policies and express an opinion on so far the direction of the administration of President Muhammadu Buhari is a syndicated journalist, Jimi Disu. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Disu, for joining me on the phone. You know, we didn't have a chance to speak at the public presentation of those 3 books by the former special advisor to the former governor of Lagos State at Muson Center. I wanted your comment first on that event.
Well, as you know, I was at the event. I thought there were quite a number of people that I would see at that event that I didn't, even though the hall was full. I mean, you saw yourself that the hall was full. But of course, I'd be lying if I didn't say that I expected to see quite some faces that I didn't see. But then I'd also be lying if I didn't know that there seems to be some strain in relationship between the ex-governor and some members of his party. So that's it. But in spite of those who didn't attend, it was a full hall. And I think it was a nice event. Well, I enjoyed myself.
What about the comment from the chairman of the day? I thought that was an unusual comment about the bravery of people who attended the event.
Well, again, I'd be lying if I say it caught me by surprise, because you must have heard in some quarters, apart from being my friend for close to over 40 years, we talk a lot about current issues. And sometimes, once in a while, I've had to represent him or throw out his views to the public on his behalf in cases where he'd rather not do it himself. So we had discussed it before, and of course the issue of Fashola's strain with his predecessors had always come up in our discussion. So I wasn't too surprised when I heard him say what he said, to the effect that well, I'm sure there are certain people who would have loved to be there, but they don't want to be seen as quote and unquote taking sides, especially those who have to benefit. Nigerians sometimes, some of us are not too known for standing on point of principle. We're always trying to see which side will benefit me the more. I must confess that I'd always been an admirer of Fashola, who most people won't believe I was seeing live for the second time in my life. Most people don't know that even though my job is out there, I'm not a recluse, but I'm not usually at any of these events and things. And I went there, well, because the publisher of his book is also the publisher of my book that will soon be released. And also I felt that there was a need to honor him, because specifically the book was meant to celebrate his achievements in the 8 years that he was there. And I think that Raji Fashola has done very, very well, given the circumstance. The issue of the corrupt practices is a thing for him to settle either in the court of law or in the court of public opinion. Sometimes in these things, you really don't know where anything is coming from and where anything is headed.
Okay, so far, it's almost 100 days since President Buhari began his 4-year term. We still don't have ministers, especially in what we call the critical ministries here. A lot of people think he's had 12 years to prepare for this seat, presidential seat, and they kind of expected, a more hurried implementation of whatever plans he had coming to that seat.
Let me confess that I was one of those who also felt that ideally should have had a cabinet by now.
Yeah.
In fact, I was one of those who early in the days thought he should have had a cabinet. And I still believe that at least he should have something like a chief of staff to help him manage his affairs. But then, having said that, what he's been able to achieve in the 100 days, I cannot fault. There's some stability in fuel supply. There's definitely stability, no matter a small, yes, but a bit of stability in electricity supply. The war against corruption has virtually taken off, amazingly, without even an attorney general. He seems to be getting ahead. On the military front, it looks like we might just be seeing the end of Boko Haram and so on and so forth. Therefore, it's not as if he's done a lot of things in 100 days that his predecessor could have done in 100 years. Of course, you know the kind of government we had. There's so much of a mess to clear up.
But
Buhari's strategy is that he wants to do a lot of things, put a lot of things in place before he hands over those functions statutorily to a minister. You know, it's one thing, you can appoint a minister, but a minister can't be removed, I mean, just like that, even if he's not cooperating with you.
Yes.
So I think what he wants to do is that there are certain things he'd like to do in the defense area, for example, without having to go through a minister of defense, where he can now have a hands-on, you know, on the military situation. In the area of corruption, to put a lot of things in place before he has some attorney general he might not be sure of.
Yes. But
the same thing he wants to put. Look at the oil industry.
Yes.
Look at what is happening in the bunkering area. As at last week, the Navy had shut down about 26 illegal refineries. The subsidy came down by 1 billion naira a month. He probably wants to put these things in place. Don't forget that even though he has the statutory responsibility to pick his ministers, he can't do it alone. He'll have to take care of certain interests. So he might not even have all the 36 ministers that he would be sure of. He would just have to manage them. So I think as far as that goes, it would be unfair to say that he hasn't done any work in the 100 days.
Yes.
Quite unlike what Reverend Father Kuka would want us to believe. I think he's done well. Even look at our international rating. Our international rating, we're a much more respected nation since he took over. Look at how he was treated in the United States. I think he's done more in 100 days than his predecessor could have done if he came 3-4 times and done in 100 years.
Yes, Mr. Disu, you know that supporters of his predecessor would have my neck if I didn't mention that they think the improvement in electricity and the stability of fuel supply is as a result of policies put in place by former President Goodluck Jonathan, and that these are the results.
I don't mind if they want to share part of the glory. They are free to do so. What I know is that these things are stable. I'm not going to go into any debate with any supporters of anybody. We all know what we went through in the 6 years their own president was there. So I'm not going to be going into any debate into somebody who moved from 300 billion a year, moved the subsidy to 1.2 trillion, whose finance minister has been accused of not being able to account for $6 billion.
Yes.
So they can take the glory. We are not interested in the glory. We are interested in things being done. What we are saying now is that now that we have Buhari, since Buhari took over, these are the things that have taken place. If he led the foundation, even if he did the job, if Buhari borrowed his template, so be it. They can take the glory. That's for Buhari supporters to also take care of. But what I do know is that in his tenure that has been there, for once in how many years, at least I feel that my country is headed in some kind of direction. I look at the leadership and I'm proud of what I see on all fronts. I'm proud when I see my president. I'm proud when I see my vice president. Nobody is telling me that my president looks clueless and doesn't even know what he's doing. But my president now goes on CNN, and I'm proud to watch it over and over again on YouTube.
What about the allegation that the war against corruption seems to be selective? People are pointing fingers at members of the president's own political party.
In anything in life, Angela, you have to be selective. When you wanted to put this program together, it's like somebody saying that, why are you talking to Jimi Disu when you could have spoken to 154 other Nigerians? You have to start from somewhere. People said that he should probe Obasanjo, he should probe Yaradua, he should probe this. You might as well tell him to go and probe Lord Lugard. But what I'm saying is that he is probing what has been handed over to him.
Yes.
He appears focused to me. He is probing oil sales because all the oil situation is now under his purview, and he needs to know what has happened. Ditto for defense. So it makes sense, and it's unfortunate for the predecessor that his own people have to be the one to answer the questions. And therefore, I don't think there should be an apology for that. These kind of things will always surface. Because a policeman's brother robbed and wasn't caught doesn't mean that if you are caught robbing, you should go scot-free. So in that sense, they don't have my sympathy. He is selective, yes. He is only probing issues that relate to his own level of governance. And people seem to forget something. He cannot go and probe a governor.
Yes.
You can't just go and pick up somebody and say, look, you were governor of so and so state. What have you done with how that's why you have separation of states, state powers and so on and so forth. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
And then what I find funny is that every time, because we are not going to pretend as if we don't know who they are talking about. They're probably talking about maybe Tinubu and so on. I'm not holding brief for anybody. But come out with proof. But in this case, nobody has accused President Jonathan of being corrupt. What he has been accused of is a lot of corruption has taken place under his watch. Those are two different things. And of course, the people are now being invited and the courts will sort them out. Yes. What do you want him to do? Sit back and do nothing?
And the reforms in the NNPC, you know, what do you make of those reforms?
NNPC, it's early days yet, Angela. The part that I like, though, is that all the proceeds, all proceeds will go into the government account. That is good and solid. A lot of reforms are going to take place. But let me tell you what my own take is, Angela.
Yes.
I believe that there have always been enough laws and guidelines for us to have a better country. What we have always had lacking is the will to enforce the law and enforce the guidelines. Those who said that these corporations should retain a bit of their proceeds for their operations and so on and so forth did it in good faith. They didn't know that these guys will be whacking all the money. But this would happen the moment you get a sense that you're not being supervised. I mean, look at it this way. It's like you even give me a cake and tell me, Mr. Disu, a cake that has already been cut. Can you please hold this cake for me? So what do? One day I'm hungry, I take a little slice. Another day I'm feeling funny, I take a little slice. Until by the time you come, I tell you, sorry, there's no cake again. It was eaten by rats. That is what has happened in this case. People were left unsupervised for the past almost 10 years. They were left to do whatever they like. There was no control at the center. First Yar'Adua was ill, and then now we had this other gentleman to contend with who virtually left everybody and bound everybody over to the Philistines. You know, what we had was a complete rudderless situation in which everybody just did as they damn well pleased. So it's early days yet. The result of the reforms is what we make out of what we have done. The NNPC GMD says at the end of every week he's going to be briefing the government. He has even said that before he's asked to do so. That shows a lot of will. I hope he will keep to it. It's one thing to say something, it's another thing for the action to actually take place. But once Buhari doesn't take his eyes off the ball, and once everybody understands his body language, that this is a no-nonsense man, then I think we'll just jolly well get by. And
do you anticipate any drama in the Senate now when ministers start to go for screening? Do you think all is well in the National Assembly?
For as long as that screening is done under Saraki, who is finding always possible to please the president, I don't think there'll be too much of a problem. That I can assure you. Okay. Because you know he's in a corner that I wouldn't want to be if I were him. He's under investigation for corrupt practices.
Why don't you want to be in his corner? Why wouldn't you want to be in his corner?
His presidency in the Senate is not stable. So I'm sure he'll be wanting to do everything possible to please the president.
Do you think that with the nomination of Tunde Fowler as the FIRS boss, the issue of his honorary degree should count against him?
No, I think that the honorary degree, but I'm surprised the man of his exposure fell for that, whatever. We get, all of us get letters, all over the place asking us to come and take some spurious or nonsensical honorary degree. I'm surprised the man of his exposure fell for that gag. And then he now uses the word doctor. That's a social thing. It really shouldn't affect his nomination as the boss of FIRS. However, again, I'll be lying if I say I don't know all the murmuring that has been going on around town. But I think he's mature enough to know that FIRS is not the same as LIRS. If I were him, whatever document is given to me as conditions of service and conditions under which I work, I'll read it line by line and be very, very careful with it. And I think I suggest to him, if any of his children is going to get married during his tenure, he should wait till when he leaves government. Going by the wedding he had when he was chairman of the LIRS, if you get where my point is going.
And I must bring you back to Lagos State, where you and I reside. What do you make of those allegations?
I don't reside in Lagos. I'm a Lagosian.
Your reaction to those allegations against the former governor of Lagos State, Babatunde Fashola, senior advocate of Nigeria?
Much as I like Tunde Fashola and I admire him and still do, I think that some of the allegations against him are a bit worrying. Running a website for 78 million with the contractor saying he got only 12. If taken to the court of law, he might be able to give an appropriate answer to some of these things. Yes. Because he was to explain later that, oh, the 78 million was not just for the website, it was also for other things, for the apps and so on.
Yes.
My first reaction is that, this doesn't sound right.
Yes.
And then my second reaction is still that it doesn't sound right. And then my third reaction again, after thinking, is that, okay, let's see what explanation he will come up with if there's an official question asked.
Yes.
That is, if it's taken to trial or whatever.
Yes.
So that's where it is. But of course, you know that you're talking to somebody. I love this guy. So like any human, I have a bit of a bias and a bit of sympathy for him. I'm just human. I'm confessing that, and I'm wishing that it were not true.
Yeah.
But I'm not holding brief for him. That's not for me to do.
Okay.
Even for somebody that I'd never spoken to.
You know, going to Osun State now, you know, the governor there, Aregbesola, and those allegations against him by the judge in the state, what do you think of the whole situation in Osun State, with some people in the state even crying foul because his daughter you know, got married and he had a wedding ceremony for her?
I mean, let me start from there and move backwards.
Yes.
If he has a wedding to do, he has a wedding to do. We don't know whether he had it for her or not.
Yes.
That is neither here nor there.
Yes.
And I'm not too conversant. When I say not too conversant, I don't know what the official reason would be that you haven't paid salaries for 7 months. I think that is enough to impeach any governor, if you ask me. Yes. I don't want to hear any excuses. I don't. In better climes, in South Africa, beside us here, if you set up a business and you don't pay your workers at the end of the month, you close shop. That means that you can't run the business. If you're a governor and you can't pay salaries for 7 months, that means you can't run the state. I'm not interested in excuses. You have IGR, you have various ways by which you can get money and pay them. Even if you can't pay full salaries, pay a little stipend. You sit back, you watch your workers for 7 months, you don't pay them. It's the greatest act, it's the greatest inhuman act of irresponsibility I've ever seen. If I were him, by the 2nd month, if it's so bad, I just put my hands up and say, I'm sorry, it doesn't look like I'm doing right, I can't pay you guys. You sit down there for 7 months, you don't pay your workers, and you make excuses. Now a judge who also has not been paid files a petition against the governor at the House of Assembly. The House of Assembly toss everybody up and down and give him a clean bill of health. I don't know what kind of irresponsible country we are living in all honesty. And I don't know what kind of workers we have. I don't know where is the labor union in all this. All the monies that have been deducted from worker salaries, from God knows how long when, that you now have a situation like this, the Labour Congress sits back in that same state and does nothing. Now somebody has come up with some story to say the judge wants to search her husband, when some other people have produced evidence that the so-called husband left the woman in 2009. And even the quoting whatever, that a divorce has actually taken place. Only in Nigeria, Angela. Only in Nigeria.
Mr. Disu, your reaction to the recent arraignment of the former National Security Advisor Sambo Dasuki. People are surprised because they thought that, well, with the northern president, we would never see anything like that.
Why would they think you won't see anything like that? Because it's a what? If it's a northerner, so what? So what? It's a new game we're playing here. It's a new dispensation. This is the Nigeria we all wanted to have, which we hope we will have, and it seems we might have, is where nobody is above the law. So he will have his day in court.
Well, you know how... You know how things play out here. I
mean, we're gradually going out of that. That I think the people are too exposed these days to fall into such whatever. If he's been found wanting, he will have his day in court. And it's a decent thing to do. He hasn't been thrown in jail. He's just been charged to court. He will go to court, he will get his bail. And so be it. It's not any different from any other person. I mean, some traditional rulers have stood trial before anyway. So what are we talking about here?
And the recent defection of a lot of people in the PDP in Bayelsa State, especially those described as close aides of former President Goodluck Jonathan, they all defected to the APC. What did you make of that?
There are two sides to it. One is that, of course, you know, most Nigerians play stomach politics. They go where the cookie jar and the honey pot is fullest, so they can have a bit of the action. That has been the whatever, and I'm sure even Jonathan would have known that in the first instance. And secondly, no insult meant to the man, but you know, he's not really a charismatic person. You know, is Jonathan a politician? Come to think of it, yes, he became president more by providence than any other thing. But is he a politician? Does he have that charisma to keep people in place through thick and thin? I don't think he has. I mean, so I'm not surprised that that has happened.
On the 6th of August, former President Goodluck Jonathan paid what is called a secret visit to President Buhari. On Friday, the 7th of August, former President Obasanjo also paid a visit to President Buhari. Now, you and I know that in the history of Nigeria, no president has ever investigated or prosecuted a former president. What do you make of all these secret meetings?
If the man is found wanting, he should be prosecuted. I don't believe in all this soft landing. That is what has gotten us to where we are now. You want to provide a soft landing for one individual for the sufferings of over 200 million people. He's a human being like every one of us. He put himself forward to serve us, and what did we get? So if he's found guilty and if he's found wanting, the law should take its course. And we are going to insist that the law should take its course. In other countries, presidents have been jailed. In America, President Nixon was jailed by the Attorney General he appointed. He prosecuted him. So where I'm going is all these visits to me, trying to provide a soft landing. We meet, if we say we want change, it must be in its full ramifications. We need to make an example of people. You don't want to embarrass one man. You don't want to make one man suffer. But I want you to close your eyes and see the number of people that have died because of the misrule of the 6 years. Aren't those people human beings? Don't they have families? We need to set an example. When we set that example, because that example is better than what happened in Ghana, when to put them on the straight and narrow, they had to line up all the former leaders and shoot them. Do we want to do that here? No. Do we want our country to get to that level? No. So what are we talking about? We have an opportunity now to set a good example. To say that no matter how high up you are in the social ladder, no matter how high up you are in the political ladder, we will say no to any kind of corrupt practice. So that is my take on that.
And on a final note, Mr. Disu, I have to let you go. I'll leave you now to do what we call the viewers' rant on 60 Minutes with Angela.
What I do feel right now is that really and truly for the first time in a long while, I feel a sense that my country is headed somewhere. It's not El Dorado, it's not completely perfect, but at least it looks as if the first two steps that one is seeing is a bit unsteady, but it's still headed in the right direction. I think a lot of responsibility also falls on us as citizens of this country to know that the government alone can't do these things. If, for example, they're talking about corrupt practices, you need to know that you cannot turn your eyes when your neighbor, it's so clear to you that your neighbor is involved in a corrupt practice. Every little corrupt practice that happens around you could end up making life difficult for you. It is important for us to know that. Every act of corruption around you could end up contributing to making your own life miserable. So we all need to join. Buhari is not going to come down from his seat in Abuja to come and find out what is happening in Surulere or Bariga local government. So we also need to be on the alert. And we should also be alert to know that those who have been in the past, these are the following things that they want. 1, they want to keep their loot. 2, they don't want to be charged to court. They don't want to go to jail for anything. And 3, they want to, if possible, continue looting. And these 3 things we definitely must prevent, in the things that we do. As usual, I wish Nigeria well. Because wishing Nigeria well, I wish myself well and wish everybody well. But I think it's so far so good.
Thank you very much, Mr. Disu, for joining me on the phone today. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela.
Join me again after the break.
It is difficult to respond to that question.
Angela, that's a great question.
Great question, Angela.
Angela, that is a very great question.
That's a great question.
Okay, that's a great question.
Yeah, very good question.
That's a good question.
This is an interesting question you put.
60 Minutes with Angela. Getting answers to every question you always wanted to ask.
So what is 60 Minutes with Angela all about? It's not an interview. I like to think it's a conversation between two people making the news, people who are in the news, and those who become the news. And the whole idea is to inform, to educate, or to clarify, as the case may be. It is an art getting people to answer the questions that everyone is thinking in their minds. And that's what we try to do on 60 Minutes with Angela. I ask all the questions that everyone's thinking about and no one wants to voice. All the questions you always wanted to ask, you get those answers on 60 Minutes with Angela. Every week on this station, 60 Minutes with Angela, getting answers to every question you always wanted to ask. Welcome back, and I take you back now to the public presentation of 3 books written by the former Special Advisor on Media and Publicity to the former Governor of Lagos State, Babatunde Fashola. These books, compiled and edited by Hakim Bello and Dakwadebi at an event held at the Mousson Center on Tuesday, the 18th day of August, 2015. I leave you now with the sights and sounds from that event. My
Lord, the Honorable Chief Judge of Lagos State, the representative of the Senate President, Honorable Mark Ojuola, the representative of my predecessor, Governor Bola Ahmed Tinubu, Professor Tunde Samuel, thank you for the updates on surrender values. And this was the kind of camaraderie, really, with which we did our work in that government. And surrender values were Prof's continuous audits and assessment of the way our government was doing from 2003 right through to 2007. And it was fun as much as it was hard work. Otumba Bimbo Ashiru, representing the Governor of Ogun State, thank you very much. Thank you, all of you, my lords, judges of the Lagos High Court, YCAP chiefs representing the Oba of Lagos, the Oloris, our mother, our matriarch, former Deputy Governor, Elijah Okunu, thank you very much for your motherly rule, your wise counsel, from government to government, including mine. Members of my family, my friends, the book reviewers in person and by representation, thank you all very much. And all of those who have worked backstage to put all of this together, thank you all very much. And also a word of thanks to our chairman, who unavoidably had to leave us. And as he travels to Abuja, we wish him journey mercies. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we gather today to receive 3 publications. The Great Leap, in bold print, and the Lagos Blowdown. They are about events and activities that took place during my tenure as Governor of Lagos State. In that sense, it seems to me that it may be tempting to think that this day truly belongs to me. Regrettably, it does not. It belongs to Hakim Bello, who painstakingly documented all of this work for us. It belongs also to Dakwadeni, who worked with him to deliver this. To all of you who have come to join us at this event, what you have done is to join us in celebrating and honoring Mr. Hakim Bello, a gentleman, a family man, and a consummate professional whose passion for his work epitomizes his fidelity to any cause that he believes in, and I will tell you why later. It is true that 2 out of 3 presentations relate to things that I wrote. But let us all remember that whatever I wrote was about people and about events and about Lagos. They were about people who started this journey before me, especially my predecessor, Governor Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and the men and women who served with him. And I've seen quite a number of them here. Professor Samuel, who represented him, Wale Edo, somewhere in the hall, Jide Sanwo-Olu served with him and served with me. I see Senator Muse somewhere in the hall. Olukoga, I see Junaid, I see Mrs. Williams, and I see so many of you. So those things I wrote are about all these people. They are also about men and women who served with me. Women like Mrs. Owuru, men like Chukwuka Shore, men like Rotimi Oyekon, Larry Babalola, Jide Sanwo-Olu again, Junaid, and all of us. Judges in their own right, in their own fields and in their departments, including our chief judge. Indeed, whatever I wrote was about the over 21 million people who call this great island and city-state their home. It is about the Oloris as it is about the white cap chiefs. It is also about one lady in our midst who represents the generation behind me. It is about Nabila Shuaib. Now I believe Nabila must be about 14 or thereabouts. She was about 6 when I took office. And she wrote me a letter, made sure that her mother, Justice Okunu Shuaib, delivered that letter to me, setting out what I must do: healthcare, security, schools for children. I was later to get another letter from another young lady, Omoehi Ighodalo, and her father, Aswe Ighodalo, was the Postmaster General. But I kept those letters on my table for 8 years. I framed them, and I've taken them to my home. But all of what happened was really about these people. The generation ahead, those who came before, those of us who are privileged to be there today, and those who are coming behind. And they are perhaps the most important people, the next generation. It is those people we gather to celebrate at the invitation of Akim Bello. As I put these remarks together, I anticipated that there would have been some customary review of the 3 publications before I spoke. And I think that my anticipations were correct. And I must express very profound gratitude and appreciation to Professor Dari, represented by Angela Ajetumobi, and also to Dr. Miraji, and of course town planner Moses Ogunleye, for all your very kind and generous words. So, as far as contributions about the book go, I would only speak about the blowdown. And I will start from 2006. What was missing in that documentary was that that building partially collapsed during a census period. It was a period in which Governor Tinubu had directed that all residents should stay at home for 3 days, because we can only now imagine the kind of tragedy that would have befallen Lagos had people gone to work that day when that 21-story building partially collapsed at the top. I think it was about 5 floors or so that went down. But I think we must leave here understanding the importance of the census at the time, because another census beckons on us next year. In all of our life's experience, I don't think that we can fairly say that we have recorded an accurate data of the number of people that we are. And from the people who did our first census, who are now credited with owning up that the figures were falsified, the onus is upon us to get it right in 2016. I say this because data, in my view, is important. If the work of government is to provide service to people, its efficiency will be determined by its knowledge of how many people need service. And therefore, without accurate census figures, it may seem that we are not determined to head in the path of development. So the numbers have changed from 160 million to 170 million, and sometimes you now hear 180 million. But I recall that during that census exercise in 2006, we worked with the National Population Commission then. And when they returned a number of 9-point-something million, it was clear that, in Fela's words, this had become government magic. Because I recall clearly that for 11 nights and 11 days, we did not sleep. It was my office as Chief of Staff that led that effort with all the local government chairmen in Lagos State. And the Population Commission told us they were going to enumerate households. And the definition of a household was one family: husband, wife, and children. And at the conclusion of that exercise, we enumerated 4.5 million households in Lagos. Yet they returned a number of 9 million. So it meant that every household in Lagos only had husband and wife and no child. But that is a matter for us to take seriously, for us to play our roles when the time comes. Because when census time comes, some people will say they are going back to their state. Census is not about where you come from, it's about where you live. Because the data that is aggregated here will be the data that will be used to plan your life, plan that of your children, and plan that of the next generation. But that said, we were saved a great tragedy. But nevertheless, a diminution of property had occurred. We have lost a national asset, in short. At the time it happened, only the architect of the universe knew that I would be the governor. But I inherited that building, and work had then stopped on the Broad Street. When I called our contractor on the Broad Street why they stopped work, they said, well, this building is going to come down one way or the other. And for the safety of our own workers, we will no longer work here until you find a way to remove it. When I asked them if they could do it, they said this was way beyond their scope. And so the search for how we will bring down this building commenced until we found a company called Wreckers. And in the event, they brought the building down and perhaps lived true to their name. But you will see in that documentary that there was a time when the Oba of Lagos spoke, thanking the federal government. Yes, late President Yar'Adua deserved to be thanked. At the time, his party in Lagos was up in arms that we had no business with that building, we had no warrants to approach it, and we must do nothing. But when I went to see him, and I presented very clear photographs taken by my photographer, Lukesh, about the state of the building, I told him about the preparations that had been done. He said to me, Governor, what they came to tell me was that you wanted to take over a federal government building. They did not tell me that this was a disaster waiting to happen. Go ahead and do what you need to do. May his gentle soul continue to rest in peace. That provided context. For them, this was about our property. For us, this was about a threat to life and a threat to property. Well, perhaps when I find time, I will be able to write and live my own experiences. But all I need to quickly add is that, as you have seen during the blowdown, it was a very challenging moment. Everything could go wrong, but thankfully, nothing went wrong. We found good people. I saw Assistant Commissioner of Police Odumosun earlier in the day. He was the one who led the security details and the briefs. And as I was whispering to Alhaja Okuno, just before blowdown, we suddenly realized that there were people in the vicinity, and we had to abort and start again. The last 10 seconds of that blowdown have perhaps gone down in my own memory as perhaps the longest 10 seconds of my life. Because all the while that we were planning, our contractors didn't tell me what role I was going to play. So on the day after they had suffused the building with at least 5,000 pieces of dynamite, they had pre-weakened it ready to fall, and I got to the site. They handed me a walkie-talkie, and they said, we will start a 5-minute countdown. But when it is 10 seconds to go, we will call you on this walkie-talkie for you to give the last 10 seconds okay or to abort. And I still lack enough words to describe how almost surreal those last 10 seconds were. I'm sure that if anybody recorded my voice at that time, it must have been shaking. But indeed, go we had to, because we were propelled not by fear, but by a larger cause, to save human life and to protect property. Yes, there was fear, but in all of that fear, I think we found the will to proceed. And in the event, I think we got it right. There were fears. What will go wrong? What if the MD of Afribank, I recall, Afribank Towers was a new tower just next door, said, look, you can't do this, please, leave this building alone, because my own head office is in danger. The church, well, you know, we will leave everything to God, but they were not happy. But what we did not disclose to Lagosians was that we had actually taken an audit of every building within a mile, a kilometer radius of that building. And we had taken out a global insurance for every building in the event that we got it wrong. We took out that policy with easily one of the largest insurance groups in the world then, the AIG in the United States. But you know what? After we successfully imploded the building, AIG was hit by a global financial crisis. But at that time, our policy had become spent. Now, I said I will come back to Akim, and I will do so very quickly, because our paths crossed in 2006. At that time, my political journey to the governor's office was beginning. And I had no clue how to deal with the media. And we met through one of my colleagues. I didn't know where he worked. I just knew that, well, this was another journalist, so let's talk. We sat down for about 30 minutes in my office as Chief of Staff. Then he asked me many questions, none of which I can now remember. But he left me and said bye-bye. A week later, he came back and said, look, I have resigned my job as a newspaper editor in Abuja, and I'm volunteering myself for you. And he did so without condition. And immediately we won the election, he disappeared. And I said, no, you are not going anywhere. We did this together. Come and work with me. Thankfully, he accepted, became my media advisor for 8 years. And I think that for those, in the nature of the responsibility that I have, it is impossible not to offend people. And I think that without being a priest or an imam, what I can say publicly is that Akim went around behind my back making friends for me that I did not know. This is, of course, a different strategy from those who make enemies for their principals. And for those who have to manage the image of politicians, I think Akim's quiet men, diligent and dedicated professional commitment is something that we can all learn from. Thank you very much for offering yourself to serve our state. And I thank all of you who have turned out in this number to celebrate a true professional, somebody to whom I believe the journalism profession can rightly say, this is one of us in whom we are well pleased. I believe that in that documentary, some of you saw a walkie-talkie with me, those who were watching. I have kept that walkie-talkie for about 7 odd years as part of my record of service. Because the blowdown that you just saw has already gone global on National Geographic. It was a great learning curve for people involved in bringing down distressed buildings. Nothing like this had ever been done before. They showed us the Oklahoma building that was partially demolished. The difference was that the Oklahoma building that was partially demolished and which was brought down had no buildings close to it. So this was the first time in the history of controlled demolition globally that they had to bring down a partially distressed building with buildings less than 10 meters on both sides. They did it successfully, and not even the church lost a window pane. On that day, on September 21, this state and this nation walked into history by that blowdown. The little piece of history I've kept with me is that walkie-talkie. But I have decided to give it up today to honor Akim, and it is now here in this box. And Akim says to me that it is too heavy for him to keep. And so we're going to give it to any one of you to keep it for the rest of us in an American auction that will be conducted soon. Thank you very much for listening, and thank you for coming.
Your Excellency, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, this is not a vote of thanks, but I must necessarily start on a note of gratitude to God Almighty for making today possible, to my boss, Governor Babatunde Raji Fashola, SCN, for remaining true to his words as I have always known him to be. When he directed that the book launch was going to be postponed from May 15, that it was originally scheduled for, I thought the world was coming to an end because a lot had been committed then, and he just said, look, why is it not possible for you to present this book after we've left office? Indeed, it goes to show the reputation that you have, that indeed we're presenting after you've left office, and we still have this large turnout of people. Thank you very much, sir.
Well, that's it for this week. I'm Angela Ajitumobi. Thank you for watching.